Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Nadine and I am the NBA Mission Administrative Support person, and I'd like to welcome you all today to our live chat on Facebook regarding any and all questions on our current application. With me here today is the Vice President of Development and Marketing, April Lewton, another member of the Grants Committee. And really this chat this afternoon is really intended for any and all questions related to the grants application. So feel free to type in your questions and we'll do our best to provide the best answer that we can. But if you still have questions after our Q&A session today, feel free to contact us via the grants email address, which is grants@nbacares.org. Okay, and now April, to you.
Thanks so much, Nadine. I do just want to say we also have this going on our Zoom, and so one of our attendees, Cheryl, just joined us on Zoom as well. So welcome, Cheryl. I hope you can hear us and see us. Just for the Zoom, since you are on Zoom, there is a functionality for you to type in. Oh, good. Yes, you used a hand. Thank you. There is a functionality to type in your questions, and we can also see the questions that you raised there. We're going to do just a little bit of some intro to the grants before we get to the questions. But thank you, Cheryl, for logging in on Zoom, and for all of you who are following us on Facebook. One of the things that we wanted to just respond to was the question about applications. We've had some questions about whether the application is available, where is the application available? So on our website, nbacares.org, there is a grants resource page, and you will find there a link to an online application. And so the application for our mission and ministry grants, it does need to be submitted online. We use this wonderful program called Smarter Select. And what Smarter Select allows you to do as a user is create a user ID. So you can start the application and maybe you don't have time to finish it, or you need to go and research some additional information from other people. You can start and stop the application. So in the online application function, there is the ability to come back and to your application information will be saved. So that's a really very user-friendly functionality that we like. We also did a little bit of revisioning of the application. This is year 2 of our MBA Mission and Ministry grants. And so last year we asked lots of wonderful questions, and the application was a little bit longer. And so for year 2, for this grant cycle, we did a little bit of abbreviation. And so hopefully you'll see when you go through the application, just some real clarity about the areas of information that we're asking you to respond to. And that includes budget. So there is a pretty straightforward section related to budgets. We will ask you questions about the budget of the actual grant project you want to receive dollars for, but we'll also be asking you some questions in the application about the budget of the organization that you're with. Because most often grantees are applying for a project that's happening within an organization, whether it be a church or a health and social service ministry. So that's one of the first questions we get a lot of is, tell me more about the application. And so that is very much an online feature. The next question really that we get a lot of is kind of what are the criterias of the grant and the funding. And so we want to, again, at www.nbacares.org, our grants resource page, there is a wonderful frequently asked question, FAQ. It's a downloadable PDF, so you can print it off and you can have it for those of you who still love the paper. But you can see the FAQ, and in it there are criteria around what we will fund. And so just wanted to point your attention to that FAQ. I actually was going to go there myself so that I could read a bit of that for you. It talks a little bit, our FAQ talks a little bit about the history of the grants. These are made available really through the generosity of many of our historic donors who wanted to support ministries that are serving at-risk children and youth and seniors. And so those are our two primary criteria areas, is the ability for your project, for your ministry to make a meaningful impact on those two communities. For those of you who know a little bit about MBA, those are our historic communities too. I mean, we really got our start back in 131 years ago serving those two primary communities. And so we welcome grant applications in which you're doing some really innovative things, helping the needs of at-risk children and youth and seniors. And so that's what leads the FAQ. And then you'll also see on there, especially on page 1, a list of things that our grants will not support. And so we welcome you to look at that list and ensure that your project isn't about that, but that we also provide you on page 2 of the FAQ, just kind of there are grant tiers. And so we want you to be aware of that, as well as a little bit of explanation behind those tiers. We call them tiers, but they are also identify the grant dollar amounts. And so there's the Catalyst grants that support between $1,000 and $5,000 US dollars, but $1,000 to $5,000 projects. Innovation grants, which are about supporting projects in the range of $6,000 to $15,000. And then our largest grant tier, and we did have one from last year in 2017, is the impact grants. And those are those that are going to receive, that are applying for and receiving grant dollars in the range of 20,000 plus. And so read that page 2 to get a better understanding of the tiers and really where you see your project in ministry. Let me pause for a moment and go back to Nadine because she's been following Facebook. Are there questions that have come online that you?
Yep. So one of the questions is, if you're a part of the Incubate initiative, can you still apply?
That's a great question. And I believe that came from our dear friend Eliud. Eliud, greetings there to you in Texas. One thing we would say is that if you're receiving major grant dollars from any of our other initiatives, whether they're Incubate or anything else, we're not offering grants to those projects. Needless to say, I mean, it's not because obviously we don't think your projects or your ministries are amazing and wonderful, because we do. We just want to we just want to be able to offer them to other ministries and organizations as well. And so at this time, we're not awarding grants to those who are already receiving dollars in another part of our program areas. Is there another question?
Not that I can see.
Cheryl, since you're following us on Zoom, did you have a question for us as well that we can respond to? There's so many screens, Nadine, I'm trying to follow. And Cheryl, just a reminder, if you're looking for where to type in that question, there is a Q&A option at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So hopefully that is pretty self-evident. One of the other things that we wanted to do for you in this kind of live chat time is to just talk about a couple of the 2017 grantees. There is, if you haven't seen it, a whole directory page, which Nadine did a lot of wonderful work on and putting together last year. Yes, actually, Rob, you just type that in about who has received grants. So if you go to, again, our mbacares.org, you will see that in the menu option, you can see a full directory of those 2017 grantees. And so you can see not only just kind of the project that they were funded grant dollars for, but you can also, there should be links to their homepage so that you can even dive deeper into their mission and their work, especially if you happen to be in their area and you want to get more involved. One of the projects I had the pleasure of meeting in person because we were there visiting in the Cleveland area. It was the Betaway group with Michelle Moreland, and they are part of Heights Christian Church, and they're doing just this amazing project about offering services to seniors that are often identified as victims or really targeted as victims of a lot of the gambling that happens. So senior abuse in that regards. And so they, as a ministry and as a project, have created this what they call a faith-based related outreach to seniors who are wanting to have that kind of support to move away from addictions and gambling, or have that kind of support to have someone to talk to. And so they're really at the beginnings of this kind of outreach ministry, and they were in need of some startup dollars to begin to find out more about how they can serve seniors in their area. And so they received grants to do that, and Michelle was just really amazing and wonderful in her story when she talked about just, there were seniors that were coming to her and to her church, and she was looking around like, who can help these folks? Who can do something? And really it was Heights Christian Church who said, I think we can do something about it. And so that's really where their wonderful project came out of. And so the Betaway group in Cleveland, Ohio, they're on that directory of 2017 grantees. I think, Nadine, you also had a grantee program that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the Disciples Personal Care Pantry, which is a grantee started by First Christian Church in Burke Burnett, Texas. And I heard about them during the NBA OGMP trip when they came and gave kind of an, not a speech, but kind of like an info session on what they're doing with their funding. And it was great because in my previous work, I only ever got to interact with people via email or sometimes Zoom, but to actually see these people talk about their projects in person and to really feel that passion face to face was really gratifying. And basically, the Disciples Personal Care Pantry provides cleaning products, toiletries, and personal care items to town residents. And Burke Burnett is not a big city; it's not a bustling metropolis, but Margaret Arlington, who was really doing a lot of the heavy lifting that day. She's not the pastor. She's a layperson, a member of the congregation, and I think it was a really great example of how this kind of program can lift up leaders in our churches that aren't traditional, that don't occupy these traditional leadership positions. You know, she's a layperson, but it was just a really distinctive memory for me. And then afterwards, during the Q&A, people from much larger churches across the state were asking her questions about how did you get started? How do you manage this? What is the day-to-day operations? You know, people who would have access to much better maybe other funding resources or transportation or networking. And here they were asking this tiny little church in this tiny little town. And I thought it was just a really great way to also show that you don't necessarily need to let that be an obstacle to you. Yes, it is more difficult, but other people have done it, and you don't have to be, you know, reverend, pastor. You know, you can be a lay person as long as you have a passion to help your community, for people who are older, for older adults, for at-risk children and youth. You can do it, and I really look forward to what they're going to do in the future.
Thanks, Nadine, for sharing that. Are there other questions that have come up on Facebook that we can respond to?
I did see one question from someone on Facebook asking if there'd be a conflict of interest regarding requesting UCC funding as well.
That's a really interesting question and meaningful question as well. I think many of our communities have connections, as well as our clergy have connections to UCC. At this point, all I can say is as long as your application is following in line of the criteria of the grants, that's what our grant committee will look at. There is a section in the application that talks about what are your other sources of funding or revenue sources. And so we'll take that into consideration. But really, especially as a grant committee, and it's made up of representatives from our staff and from our trustees, we really are trying to focus on the criteria of the grants. So you'll disclose, you know, what your other revenue sources are, but yeah, just make sure that you're checking the marks in terms of all the other criteria. I think, Rob, you also had a question about Rise and Shine, the ministry in Midland, Texas. That was also another ministry we had the wonderful opportunity of hearing from directly when we were traveling with Reverend Terry Hord Owens in Dallas. The executive director came and presented about that ministry. And I will just say, I know that he is more than willing to receive questions or inquiries. Rob, if you want to reach out to him directly. They're a ministry that have been doing their work, working with communities and with families in particular for some time. And so they're not a startup ministry by any stretch of the imagination. They've been doing this for a little while, and the funding was really to help them expand some of their programming. And they have a wonderful, just wonderful ministry and wonderful kind of work that they're doing. So I would invite you to look at the directory, to go look at the Rise and Shine website. They have a really robust website as well. And if you have deeper questions about just kind of their ministry, to reach out. Well, we don't want to take up too much of this of your time. If there are any final questions that we can answer for you, we will also let you know that we do have an email that will go to many people on the grants committee. And so if you have follow-up questions that you think of, especially as you're in the midst of your grant application, email us at grants@nbacares.org. grants@nbacares.org. Nadine, if there's nothing else, and I'm looking also, Cheryl, if you have any other questions before we log off, although we'll stay on Zoom for you, Cheryl, if you have lots more questions. But again, just want to thank people who are watching us on Facebook Live, and also for Cheryl for logging in on Zoom. This is a new a new tactic, the new action we wanted to take in terms of being available for questions and answers and a little bit of a conversation, although I know it's you can only see Nadine and I. Oh, one more question. Can a non-disciples nonprofit apply for the grant? At this time, no. You'll see on the FAQ that one of the key criteria is that you are affiliated with a Christian church, Disciples of Christ. And so that is a key criteria. Again, do review that FAQ. Thank you, Mark Anderson, for your question. We, as a general ministry of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, are overjoyed to make grant dollars and really just this kind of support available to disciples ministries out there. We know that the hustle is real for you who are doing these kinds of innovative and really creative ministries, and we at MBA, we want to help support that. So we're so excited to receive applications for the second year of the 2018 Mission and Ministry Grants. And so again, email us at grants@nbacares.org for further questions. And you do have until September, although the actual deadline, Nadine, you're going to say, right?
September 14th.
September 14th. Thank you so much. You do have until September 14th to fully submit your completed application. And again, that application is only online. And so you do have to complete the application online. Rob, we will definitely say hello to your friend, Danny Loving Cartwright. Thank you so much. And Nadine, I think you're going to close us out.
Yep. So again, thank you everyone for posting your questions. I feel like it enlightened all of us. And we all look forward to applications that will be coming in about helping you get to know our program better, about communicating with you guys. Again, further questions can be sent to grants@nbacares.org. You can access the application from the main navigation menu on our homepage. You'll see that when you click on the left-hand side towards the bottom, there is a sub-menu for MBA Mission and Ministry Grants Program. Underneath that, you can meet the current grantees or the 2017 grantees, and under that, you have that link to apply. And then you can also access it through our resources, again, accessible through that main navigation menu. There's a search option. You can just type in grant, and it'll be the first thing that'll pop up. So we try to provide as much information as possible online regarding, questions for the application, information on the program itself, and information on past grantees, just so that it can give you an idea of the work that you have to do, or the things that you can plan for the future in applying. But I think that's everything for now. So thank you so much for attending. Thank you, April, for your assistance in fielding most of the questions. And I think that's it for now. Thanks again, and we'll hear from you guys soon. Take care. God bless.